The explosion rocked the high-rise building, sending shards of glass cascading onto the crowded Manhattan street below. Well, at least that's what it felt like to Alexandra Cooper when her eyes locked with him across the charity gala. Alexander Blackwood, 34, billionaire tech mogul, owner of Blackwood Industries, and quite possibly the most arrogant man ever to walk the earth in Italian leather shoes that cost more than her monthly rent. Alex ducked behind a massive floral arrangement, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. This was not happening. Not today. Not when she was already dealing with Alexandra. "Is that you hiding behind the hydrangeas?" She winced at the sound of her full name. Only her mother and unwanted suitors called her Alexandra. The voice belonged to the latter category, specifically to Charles Peyton III, son of her father's business partner, and the man who had been pursuing her relentlessly for the past 3 months, despite her increasingly creative rejections. "Charles," she exclaimed with forced brightness, emerging from her floral fortress. "What a surprise." "Hardly," he said, flashing what he clearly thought was a charming smile. "I knew you'd be here. In fact, I specifically came to ask you about dinner next Friday. I've secured reservations at La Cirque." Alex's mind raced. She had run out of excuses. She had been busy with work, had previous engagements, and even claimed to be possibly coming down with tuberculosis on one desperate occasion. Charles remained undeterred. "Actually, Charles, she's engaged," came a deep voice from behind her. Alex whirled around to find herself face to face with the very man she'd been hiding from. Alexander Blackwood stood there in all his six-tool glory. Dark hair perfectly styled, gray eyes cold as winter frost, and a smile that never quite reached those eyes playing on his lips. "Engaged," Charles sputtered, looking between them. "To whom?" Before she could process what was happening, Alex heard herself say to him, and she grabbed Alexander Blackwood by his perfectly tailored lapels and pressed her lips firmly against his. The world stopped. For 3 seconds, Alexander Blackwood stood frozen, his lips unresponsive against hers. Then, just as she was about to pull away and face the mortification that would surely follow, his arm snaked around her waist, pulling her flush against him as he took control of the kiss. It was brief but devastating in its intensity. When they separated, Charles was staring at them with his mouth hanging open. "I had no idea," he stammered. "Very recent," Alexander said smoothly, his arm still around Alex's waist. She could feel the heat of his palm through the thin material of her black dress. "We've been keeping it quiet." "Well, congratulations," Charles managed before backing away and disappearing into the crowd. The moment he was gone, Alex stepped out of Alexander's embrace, her cheeks burning. "Thank you for that," she said stiffly. "I'm sorry I dragged you into my personal drama." Alexander's perfect eyebrow arched as he studied her with those unnerving gray eyes. "Do you make a habit of kissing strangers, Miss Cooper?" "We're not strangers," she retorted. "I work for your company." "In what capacity?" "Marketing department. I've been there for 3 years." He looked at her as if she were a particularly puzzling spreadsheet. "I see. Look, I appreciate the save, but we can forget this ever happened," Alex said, eager to escape the conversation in the gala altogether. Alexander straightened his tie, which hadn't been crooked to begin with. "I'm afraid that won't be possible." "What do you mean?" "My grandmother is on the board of this charity. She saw our performance and she's been quite determined that I settle down and get married." Alex felt a creeping sense of dread. So, he said with a smile that was somehow both dazzling and terrifying. "She's heading this way to congratulate us on our engagement." Before Alex could respond, she heard an elegant, authoritative voice behind her. "Alexander, my dear boy, at last you found someone worthy." Alexander's hand found the small of her back. "Grandmother," he said, turning them both to face. An impeccably dressed older woman with Alexander's same penetrating gray eyes. "I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Alexandra Cooper." Alex's protest died on her lips as the older woman clasped her hands warmly. "My dear," said Edith Blackwood, matriarch of the Blackwood family and notoriously one of the wealthiest and most influential women in New York society, "you have no idea how long I've waited for this day. When is the wedding?" And that was the moment Alexandra Cooper realized she had made a catastrophic mistake that would change her life forever. In the sleek black limousine heading downtown, Alexander Blackwood was furious. Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded, his voice low and controlled. "My grandmother has been trying to marry me off for years." "I said I was sorry," Alex shot back. "Just tell her the truth tomorrow. You don't understand. My grandfather's will stipulates that I must be married by my 35th birthday, which is in 3 months, or I lose controlling interest in Blackwood Industries." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "My grandmother has been waiting for me to find someone she approves of, and apparently that's you. That's ridiculous. Why would she approve of me? She doesn't even know me. Edith Blackwood has an uncanny ability to read people. She's never liked any woman I've dated, but she liked you instantly." He fixed her with an icy stare. "She's already texting the family. This is insane," Alex muttered. "Just tell her it was a misunderstanding. It's not that simple. My grandmother's health is fragile. Her doctors have warned us against causing her any undue stress." "So, what exactly are you suggesting?" Alex asked, fear creeping into her voice. Alexander's expression was unreadable as he delivered the words that would change everything. "I'm suggesting, Miss Cooper, that we maintain this charade. A temporary engagement followed by a quiet wedding and an amicable divorce after I secure my inheritance." "You can't be serious." "I assure you I am entirely serious. In return, I'm prepared to offer you $5 million. The number hung in the air between them. Alex thought of her student loans, her mother's medical bills, her struggling younger sister trying to get through college. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Perhaps," he agreed. "But it's mutually beneficial. You get financial security, and I keep control of my company." He extended his hand. "Do we have a deal, Miss Cooper?" As the limousine glided through the rainy New York night, Alexandra Cooper looked at the outstretched hand of the city's most eligible bachelor and made a decision that would entangle their lives in ways neither of them could possibly imagine. She took his hand. "Deal." Neither of them noticed the paparazzo who captured the exact moment their hands touched. His camera flashing in the darkness outside the car window. A photograph that would appear on the front page of every tabloid by morning. Blackwood heir finally caught tech tycoon to wed mystery woman. Alex nearly choked on her coffee as she stared at the headline splashed across the New York Post. Worse still was the photo beneath it. Her hand in Alexander's, both of them looking at each other in the dim light of the limousine. Somehow, the photographer had captured a moment that looked startlingly intimate. Her wide eyes meeting his intense gaze, their fingers intertwined in what appeared to be a tender gesture rather than the business transaction it actually was. "Oh God," she muttered, sinking onto her worn couch in her tiny Brooklyn apartment. Her phone had been buzzing incessantly since 6:00 a.m., 37 missed calls from her mother alone. As if on cue, the phone rang again. This time it was her younger sister Mia. "Are you kidding me?" Mia shrieked the moment Alex answered. "You're engaged to Alexander freaking Blackwood and you didn't tell me. Your own sister. I had to find out from TMZ." "It's not what you think," Alex began before being interrupted by a sharp knock at her door. "Hold on." "Someone's here," she told Mia, padding across her apartment in fuzzy pajama pants and an oversized Columbia University t-shirt. When she opened the door, she found herself face to face with a stone-faced woman in a crisp suit. "Ms. Cooper, I'm Vanessa Torres, Mr. Blackwood's personal assistant. May I come in?" Before Alex could respond, Vanessa swept past her into the apartment, casting a critical eye over Alex's modest furnishings and the breakfast dishes still in the sink. "I'm going to have to call you back," Alex mumbled into her phone, hanging up on her sister's protests. "Mr. Blackwood requests your presence at his penthouse immediately to discuss the situation," Vanessa announced, her gaze lingering on Alex's pajamas with thinly veiled disapproval. "A car is waiting downstairs." "I need to get dressed," Alex stammered. "You have 10 minutes," Vanessa replied, checking her watch. "And please wear something appropriate. You'll be meeting with Mr. Blackwood's PR team." 15 minutes later, Alex found herself in the elevator of one of Manhattan's most exclusive residential buildings, wearing the only outfit in her closet that might pass Vanessa's inspection, a navy pencil skirt and white blouse she reserved for important client meetings. The elevator opened directly into Alexander's penthouse, revealing a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of Central Park. The decor was minimalist and masculine, All clean lines, neutral colors, and strategically placed pieces of modern art that probably cost more than her entire education. Alexander stood by the windows, his back to her cell phone pressed to his ear. He was dressed in what appeared to be casual wear for him, dark slacks and a light blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. "I don't care what it takes. Buy their silence if necessary," he was saying tersely into the phone. "Yes, she's here now. I'll call you back," he turned, fixing those steel gray eyes on her. Cooper. "Look, I didn't know anyone was photographing us," Alex said immediately, clutching her purse like a shield. "I'm as shocked as you are." He gestured to a glass conference table where 3 people sat with laptops open. "My PR team. We need to get our story straight before this spirals any further." A woman with a sleek bob and sharp eyes stood. Justine Chen, head of public relations for Blackwood Industries. "Let's talk strategy." For the next hour, Alex sat in stunned silence as the team constructed an entire relationship history for her and Alexander. According to their narrative, they had been secretly dating for 6 months after meeting at a company function. The proposal had been private and romantic. They were deeply in love, but had wanted to keep their relationship out of the public eye. "Wait," Alex interrupted as Justine discussed potential wedding venues. "This is just temporary, right? We're not actually going through with a real wedding." The PR team exchanged glances. Alexander cleared his throat. "There's been a complication." "What kind of complication?" Alex asked, her stomach nodding. "My grandmother has accelerated the timeline. She wants the wedding to happen within 6 weeks. 6 weeks?" Alex gasped. "That's insane. I thought we have a long engagement and then quietly break it off. Unfortunately, that won't work. My 35th birthday is in 3 months, and my grandmother is insistent on seeing me married well before then." He straightened his already perfectly straight cuffs. "She's also moved up my inheritance timeline. If we're married within 6 weeks, I get control of the company immediately instead of having to wait until my birthday." Justine leaned forward. "We're thinking a small but elegant ceremony. Close family and friends only, plus a few key business associates and media representatives." "This is crazy," Alex muttered, echoing her words from the previous night. "My mother is going to have questions. A lot of questions. Which brings us to the next item on our agenda," said a tall man at the end of the table. "Background checks and family integration." "Excuse me," Alex said. "We need to vet your family and friends," he explained. "Anyone who might speak to the press needs to be briefed on our official story. You want to investigate my family?" Alex stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is going too far." "Miss Cooper," Alexander said, his voice deceptively calm. "May I speak with you privately?" Without waiting for her response, he strode toward a door at the far end of the living room. Alex followed, her heart pounding with indignation. The room turned out to be a home office, with one wall lined with books and another dominated by multiple computer screens. Alexander closed the door behind them. "You're backing out." It wasn't a question. "I didn't realize what I was getting into," Alex said. "This is way more complicated than a simple business arrangement. The terms remain the same. $5 million for a temporary marriage. And what happens when we divorce? Won't that affect your inheritance?" "The will only stipulates that I be married by my 35th birthday. It says nothing about staying married." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My grandfather was clever, but not that clever." Alex ran, a hand through her dark hair. "My family will never believe I'm suddenly in love with Alexander Blackwood. They know me too well. People fall in love unexpectedly all the time," he countered. "And I'm told I can be quite charming when motivated." She snorted. "You charming?" Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Is that so hard to believe, Miss Cooper?" He took a step closer. "You didn't seem to find me repulsive when you kissed me last night." Alex felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That was I was desperate." "As am I." He was close enough now that she could smell his expensive cologne. $5 million, Miss Cooper. Think of what you could do with that money." Images flashed through her mind. Her mother's medical bills paid in full. Her sister graduating without crushing debt. A home of her own instead of a cramped rental. "What about my job?" she asked, grasping at practical concerns to distract from his proximity. I can't exactly keep working in the marketing department if I'm supposedly married to the CEO. You'll be on paid leave effective immediately after the divorce if you wish to return to Blackwood Industries. You'll be offered a senior position in any department of your choosing. She stared at him. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I always do. His confidence was maddening. Now, are you in or out? I need your answer. Before she could respond, the door to the office burst open. Edith Blackwood stood there, elegant in a cream-colored suit, her silver hair styled immaculately. Alexander, darling. Oh, and Alexandra, how wonderful to find you both here. Alexander's transformation was immediate and stunning. His cold demeanor melted away, replaced by a warm smile as he moved to embrace his grandmother. Grandmother, what a surprise. We were just discussing wedding plans. Exactly why I'm here, Edith said, her eyes twinkling as she approached Alex. My dear, I've taken the liberty of making an appointment for you at Vera Wang this afternoon. I simply won't have my new granddaughter-in-law wearing anything but the best on her wedding day. Alex shot a panicked look at Alexander, who smoothly interjected. Grandmother, Alex and I were thinking of something small and intimate. Nonsense. Edith waved a dismissive hand. A Blackwood wedding is an event. I've already spoken with the plaza. They've had a cancellation for the first Saturday in May, just 5 weeks away. Isn't that fortuitous? Alex felt the room spinning slightly. Mrs. Blackwood, that's very generous, but please call me Edith or grandmother if you prefer. She took Alex's hands in hers. I cannot tell you how happy I am that Alexander has finally found someone worthy of his heart. When I saw you two together last night, the way he looked at you. She pressed a hand to her chest. A mother knows. A grandmother knows. Alex couldn't bring herself to look at Alexander. This sweet, elegant woman was being deceived, and Alex was complicit in the deception. Now, Edith continued, I've also taken the liberty of having your things moved here. My things, Alex repeated faintly. Well, you can't continue living in Brooklyn once the engagement is announced officially. Alexander's fiancée must reside at his address. The movers should be at your apartment now. Grandmother, Alexander said, a note of genuine surprise in his voice. Don't you think that's moving rather quickly? Edith's expression suddenly became serious. Alexander, I received some concerning news from Dr. Meeser yesterday about my heart. Nothing to worry about immediately, she added, seeing their expressions, but it has made me realize that life is precious and short. I want to see you settled and happy while I still can. The manipulation was so perfect, so devastatingly effective that Alex almost admired it. Almost. Alexander's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Of course, grandmother, whatever makes you happy, Edith beamed. Excellent. Now, Alexandra, shall we head to Vera Wang? The appointment is in an hour. Alex looked at Alexander silently, pleading for rescue. He merely smiled that perfect practice smile. Go ahead, darling. I trust your taste completely. Then to Alex's utter shock, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Whatever you choose will be perfect. The tenderness in his gesture, though purely for show, left Alex momentarily speechless. And as Edith linked her arm through Alex's and led her toward the elevator, chattering about floral arrangements and guest lists, Alex realized she had passed the point of no return. She was now, for all intents and purposes, engaged to New York's most eligible bachelor, a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenient solution to his inheritance problem. A man who, if the tabloids were to be believed, had never been in a relationship that lasted longer than 3 months. A man who was now watching her with an unreadable expression as the elevator doors closed between them. Mom, for the 5th time. It's not a prank, Alex said into her phone as she stood surrounded by boxes in Alexander's penthouse. The movers had indeed emptied her Brooklyn apartment with military efficiency, delivering her modest possessions to his sleek, modern space where they looked comically out of place. But darling, this is Alexander Blackwood we're talking about, her mother insisted. The man whose face has been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. The man who dated that Victoria's Secret model last summer. Alex winced. She'd forgotten about the model. Yes, Mom, I know who he is. And you've been secretly dating him for 6 months. My Alexandra, the same girl who once wore mismatched shoes to a job interview. That was one time. And the lighting in my apartment was bad, Alex muttered. Look, I know it's sudden, it's preposterous. I want to meet him tonight. Alex nearly dropped her phone. Tonight, Mom, we're still settling in. Dinner 7:0. I'll make pot roast. Her mother's tone brooked. No argument. And bring that sister of yours. She's been holed up in her dorm room working on some project and hasn't called me in a week. The call ended before Alex could protest further. She sank onto a box labeled books and winter clothes and put her head in her hands. Problem, came a cool voice from the doorway. Alex looked up to find Alexander leaning against the frame, watching her with those unnerving gray eyes. He changed into jeans and a simple black t-shirt that somehow still managed to look obscenely expensive on him. My mother wants us to come to dinner tonight. Ah, he stepped into the room, which she'd been informed was now her dressing room. A concept so foreign to her previous living situation that she'd almost laughed when the housekeeper showed her. Your first test as my betrothed. This isn't funny, Alex said. My mother has like emotional X-ray vision. She'll know something's off the moment we walk in. Alexander shrugged. So, we'll convince her. How? The same way we convinced my grandmother we'll act the part. He swept his gaze around the room, taking in her modest possessions. Though perhaps we should get you some new clothes first. I'm expected at a charity dinner next week, and your current wardrobe seems insufficient. Alex bristled. There's nothing wrong with my clothes. Of course not, he said smoothly. But as my fiancé, certain appearances must be maintained. Your concern for appearances is touching, she said sarcastically, standing up. But I'm not your dress-up doll. Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. No, you're certainly not that. He crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her. You are, however, the woman who's agreed to pretend to be madly in love with me, and that means you need to look the part of a Blackwood bride. I thought you hated all this inheritance nonsense, Alex said. Why are you suddenly so invested in playing along? Alexander's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. My grandfather built Blackwood Industries from nothing. I won't let it fall into the hands of the board's vultures who care only for short-term profits. It was the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him. A flash of passion behind the controlled facade. Besides, he continued, his tone lightening. You can't tell me you've never wanted to go on a shopping spree with an unlimited budget. I've always been more of a discount rack kind of girl, Alex replied. Well, Miss Cooper, welcome to the black card life. He pulled out his phone. I'll have Vanessa arrange a stylist to meet us at Bergdorf's in an hour. I don't need a stylist. I need a script for dinner with my mother tonight. Alexander slipped his phone back into his pocket. Very well, let's rehearse. What does your mother know about me? Only what she's read in the tabloids, which isn't exactly flattering. You have a reputation, you know. I'm aware, he said dryly. And what about you? Any ex-boyfriends I should know about? Anyone who might cause trouble? Alex hesitated. Just one. James. We dated for 2 years in college and broke up a year ago. He's in California now. Amicable split. Not exactly. She fidgeted with the sleeve of her blouse. He took a job in Silicon Valley without telling me, then suggested we try long distance. I said no. Alexander nodded. Good clean break. Anyone else? A few first dates that went nowhere. She frowned. What about you? Anyone I should be worried about showing up to challenge our fairy tale romance? No one serious. His expression was carefully neutral. What about the model? The one my mother mentioned, Sophia. He waved a dismissive hand. That was publicity arrangement. Her agent contacted my PR team. We attended a few events together. Were photographed at the right restaurants. Nothing more. Alex blinked. You mean it was fake like us? Not quite. There was no financial component. Merely mutual brand enhancement. He checked his watch. A sleek, understated timepiece that probably cost more than her student loans. Now about tonight. What does your mother like? Honesty, sincerity, family. Alex listed the values her mother held dear. She raised me and my sister alone after our father died when I was 12. She worked 2 jobs to put me through Columbia. Alexander's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry about your father. The simple condolence delivered without artifice caught Alex off guard. Thank you. What does she do now? She's a high school English teacher. She loves classic literature and quotes Shakespeare when she's nervous. Alex smiled fondly. "And she makes the world's best pot roast, which you'll experience tonight. I look forward to it." He paused, then added, "My mother died when I was 8, cancer." The personal revelation surprised her. "I didn't know that." "It's not in the tabloids," he said simply. "My father raised me with my grandmother's help until he passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," Alex said, understanding now why. His relationship with his grandmother seemed so important. Despite his apparent frustration with her matchmaking efforts, a moment of genuine connection stretched between them, quickly broken when Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. "Vanessa has arranged for stylists to meet us at Bergdorf's, then Saks. We leave in 30 minutes. I still don't think I need $5 million, Miss Cooper," he reminded her. "Consider it part of the job." 3 hours, and what felt like hundreds of outfits later, Alex stood in front of a three-way mirror wearing a midnight blue cocktail dress that made her feel like she'd stepped out of a movie. "This one," said the stylist, a rail-thin woman named Margot, who spoke with unshakable authority. "It's perfect for the Thompson Foundation dinner." Alexander, who had been sitting in a plush chair answering emails on his phone, looked up. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly as they swept over her. "Do you like it?" Alex asked, feeling strangely vulnerable under his gaze. He cleared his throat. "It's suitable." The stylist rolled her eyes behind Alexander's back, mouthing, "Men," to Alex with an exasperated expression. By the time they left the stores, Alexander's driver, James, was loading what seemed like an entire department store's worth of bags into the car. "I can't believe you spent that much money in one afternoon," Alex said as they slid into the back seat of the Bentley. "Consider it an investment in our mutual success," Alexander replied. "Now we should return home to change before dinner with your mother." "Home?" Alex repeated quietly. The word felt strange in her mouth when referring to his penthouse. Alexander seemed to catch her discomfort. "It's temporary," he reminded her, his voice low enough that the driver couldn't hear. "Just until we secure the inheritance and can gracefully part ways." "Right," she nodded. "Temporary." The ride to her mother's modest house in Queens was silent, with Alex growing increasingly nervous as they approached. She fidgeted with the sleeve of her new cashmere sweater. Alexander had insisted she wear something from their shopping spree. "Stop fidgeting," he murmured as they walked up the front steps. "You look like you're heading to your execution, not dinner with your mother." "Easy for you to say," Alex whispered back. "You've never experienced Helen Cooper's interrogation techniques." Before she could knock, the door flew open, revealing a petite woman in her 50s with Alex's same dark hair, strewn with elegant silver and warm brown eyes that widened at the sight of Alexander. "Mom," Alex said, forcing brightness into her voice. "This is Alexander." "Alexander, this is my mother, Helen Cooper." Alexander transformed before her eyes, his usual cool demeanor replaced by warm charm as he stepped forward with an enormous bouquet of flowers Alex hadn't even noticed him carrying. "Mrs. Cooper," he said, taking her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet the woman who raised such an extraordinary daughter." Helen Cooper, who had raised 2 girls on a teacher's salary and hadn't been intimidated by anything since facing down the e-school board for budget cuts, actually blushed. "Oh my," she said, accepting the flowers. "Please come in and call me Helen." As they stepped inside, Alex caught sight of her younger sister, Mia, lurking in the dining room doorway with wide, disbelieving eyes. At 21, Mia was the spitting image of Alex at that age, except for the bright blue streak in her hair that reflected her more rebellious personality. "And this must be Mia," Alexander said, extending his hand. "Alex has told me so much about you." Mia gaped at him, then at Alex before finally finding her voice. "Has she? Funny, because she's told me absolutely nothing about you until yesterday." "Mia," Helen scolded. "Where are your manners?" Alexander laughed, the sound surprisingly genuine. "It's quite all right. Alex wanted to keep our relationship private until we were sure it was serious." He glanced at Alex with an expression so tender it almost convinced even her. And now it couldn't be more serious. Dinner was a surreal experience. Alexander charmed Helen with compliments about her cooking and thoughtful questions about her teaching career. He engaged Mia in a surprisingly knowledgeable conversation about her computer science studies. And throughout it all, he maintained a constant connection with Alex, his hand resting lightly on hers, his gaze finding hers across the table, small gestures that painted a picture of a man deeply in love. "So," Helen said as she served apple pie for dessert, "how did this all happen? 6 months of secrecy and suddenly you're engaged." Alex tensed, but Alexander smoothly interjected. "I noticed Alex at a company event last fall." He began, his voice warm with affection. "She was arguing with our head of design about a marketing campaign." Completely unintimidated by his position or ego, he smiled at Alex. "I was captivated by her passion and intelligence." Alex stared at him, momentarily speechless. This wasn't the story they'd rehearsed in the car. "I asked her to dinner the next day," he continued. "She turned me down." "You did?" Mia exclaimed, looking at Alex with newfound respect. "I did," Alex confirmed, recovering quickly. "I thought dating the CEO was a terrible idea." "She made me work for it," Alexander said with a self-deprecating smile that transformed his usually austere features. "It took 3 attempts before she agreed to have coffee with me." "Just coffee," she insisted. "No dinner, no expectations." Helen was watching them with a softness in her eyes that made Alex's chest ache with guilt. As for the proposal, Alexander reached for Alex's hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I had planned something elaborate, but in the end it happened quite spontaneously. We were at my penthouse on a rainy evening and Alex was standing by the window watching the storm roll in over the park, and I just knew his gaze locked with hers, and for a moment the rest of the room seemed to fade away. I knew I never wanted to be without her," he finished quietly. A lump formed in Alex's throat at the beautiful lie. She forced herself to smile, squeezing his hand as if confirming his story. "Well," Helen said discreetly, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye, "I can't say I'm not shocked by all this, but I haven't seen my Alexandra look at anyone the way she looks at you, Alexander." The drive back to Manhattan was quiet, both of them processing the evening. "Your mother is lovely," Alexander finally said as they crossed the Queensboro Bridge, the Manhattan skyline glittering before them. "I can see where you get your strength." "Thank you for being so nice to her," Alex replied. "And for the story, it was convincing." Alexander glanced at her. "The best deceptions contain elements of truth." "Elements of truth." "You did argue with the head of design at the fall marketing presentation. It was quite impressive. I happened to be walking by the conference room." Alex stared at him. "You actually remember that?" "I make it a point to know the exceptional people in my company, Miss Cooper." They lapsed into silence again until they reached the penthouse. "I'll take the guest room," Alexander said as they rode the elevator up. "You can have the master suite." "That's not necessary," Alex protested. "I don't want to displace you." "It's no displacement. The guest room is perfectly comfortable." When they reached the penthouse, Alex hesitated before heading to her new bedroom. "Alexander," he turned, one eyebrow raised in question. "Do you think she bought it?" "My mother?" He studied her for a moment. "Yes, I believe she did." He paused, then added, "You should call me Alex when we're alone. It will help us avoid slips in public." "But that's my name too." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'm aware of the irony." As Alex lay in his ridiculously large bed later that night, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined would be part of her life, she found herself replaying the evening. The way Alexander had seamlessly charmed her family, the story he'd invented that seemed so real. The moment when his eyes had held hers and said he never wanted to be without her. For just an instant, she'd almost believed him, which made this arrangement all the more dangerous because in 5 weeks, she would walk down the aisle and marry a man who saw her as nothing more than a business transaction. And in 6 months or so, when he no longer needed her, their fairy tale romance would end as abruptly as it had begun. $5 million, she reminded herself as she drifted toward sleep. Focus on the $5 million, not on the way her skin tingled when he touched her hand across the dinner table. And certainly not on the inexplicable disappointment she'd felt when he'd said goodnight at her bedroom door without so much as a glance back. "No, absolutely not," Alex said, staring at the prenuptial agreement Vanessa had just handed her. "This is ridiculous." 3 weeks had passed since the engagement announcement. 3 weeks of dress fittings, cake tastings, and carefully orchestrated publics, appearances that had cemented their status as New York's favorite power couple. The wedding was now just 2 weeks away, and reality was setting in. Alexander looked up from his laptop at the dining table they now shared for breakfast each morning. Is there a problem? This prenup says I get nothing in the event of a divorce within the first 2 years, Alex said, waving the document. That wasn't our agreement. The prenup is for appearances only, Alexander explained, setting aside his coffee. We have a separate contract for our actual arrangement. The $5 million will be deposited into an offshore account in your name the day after the wedding. Then why have a prenup at all? Because it would be suspicious if we didn't, he said with practiced patience. No one would believe that Alexander Blackwood would marry without protecting his assets. Right, Alex muttered. Because you're a notorious commitment phobe. Something flashed in his eyes. I prefer the term selectively available. Despite everything, Alex laughed. Over the past weeks, she discovered that beneath Alexander's cool exterior lurked an unexpected dry wit. Living with him had been a study in contradictions. He was exacting about his schedule and workspace, but surprisingly relaxed about sharing his living areas. He worked punishing hours, but never missed their rehearsed date nights that kept up appearances. He demanded perfection from his employees, but had yet to criticize Alex for any of her missteps in their charade. Fine, she sighed, signing the prenup with a flourish. But I wanted in writing that I get to keep all the clothes and jewelry. Some of these designer pieces could fund my sister's entire education. Alexander's lips quirked. Developing expensive tastes already, Miss Cooper. Hardly, but I'm practical. Very well, I'll have the amendment added. He checked his watch. We need to leave in 30 minutes for the Thompson Foundation dinner. The Thompson Foundation dinner had been looming on Alex's calendar for days. It would be their first major society event as a couple, and the guest list included the city's most influential people, many of whom sat on the board of Blackwood Industries. 3 hours later, Alex found herself in the grand ballroom of the plaza, wearing the midnight blue gown from their shopping trip and a discreet diamond pendant Alexander had presented to her that evening. Remember, Richard Thompson is essential to the Singapore deal, Alexander murmured as they made their way through the crowd. His wife collects porcelain figurines, and they have a daughter at Princeton. Alex nodded, mentally filing away the information. She'd become surprisingly adept at navigating these events, memorizing names and connections that mattered to Alexander's business interests. Alexander, there you are. A silver-haired man in an impeccable tuxedo approached, accompanied by a woman who had clearly spent a fortune trying to look younger than her age. And this must be the famous Alexandra, who's finally captured the elusive Mr. Blackwood. Richard, Elaine. Alexander greeted them warmly, his hand settling at the small of Alex's back. May I present my fiancée, Alexandra Cooper, Alex Richard, and Elaine Thompson. It's a pleasure to meet you, Alex said, extending her hand. Alexander tells me your daughter is at Princeton. My sister is considering applying there for her graduate studies in computer science. Elaine Thompson's eyes lit up. Oh, Jessica is in computer science as well. I must give you her contact information. Perhaps she could show your sister around campus. And just like that, Alex had the meeting out of her hand. By the time the Thompsons moved on to greet other guests, Richard had promised Alexander a meeting about the Singapore project. Well done, Alexander said quietly, guiding her toward the bar. You're becoming quite the corporate wife. Don't get used to it, Alex replied with a sweet smile that belied her words. This is still temporary. Of course, he ordered champagne for both of them. Though I must admit, you've exceeded my expectations. Is that an actual compliment from the great Alexander Blackwood? Simply an observation, he replied, but there was amusement in his eyes. The evening proceeded smoothly until Alex excused herself to find the ladies' room. As she was returning to the ballroom, she overheard voices from a small alcove. I give it 6 months, a woman was saying. Blackwood isn't capable of maintaining a relationship longer than a business quarter. I don't know. A male voice replied. You haven't seen them together. He looks at her differently. Oh, please, she's pretty enough, but hardly his usual type. My money says she's pregnant, and once the baby arrives, he'll be back to his old ways. 5 million says they're divorced before next Christmas. Alex froze, her heart hammering. These people were betting on her fake marriage and getting uncomfortably close to the truth about the financial arrangement. Excuse me, she said, stepping around the corner to face the gossip. a woman she recognized as a fashion editor and a man who served on several prominent boards. I couldn't help overhearing your fascinating analysis of my relationship. They had the grace to look embarrassed, but Alex wasn't finished. While I appreciate your interest in my uterus, I can assure you I'm not pregnant. And as for Alexander's usual type, perhaps you should consider that there's more to him than the caricature you've created in your tabloid adult minds. With that, she swept past them, her heart still pounding. She shouldn't care what these people thought. This wasn't a real relationship, and yet, hearing them dismiss it so cavalierly had ignited something fierce within her. She was still fuming when she returned to Alexander's side. "What happened?" he asked, immediately reading her expression. "Nothing," she said tersely. "Just overheard some interesting speculation about our relationship." His eyes narrowed. "What did they say?" "Nothing worth repeating." She forced a smile. "Shall we dance? It would give everyone something new to talk about." Without waiting for his response, she took his hand and led him to the dance floor. As they began to move to the music, she felt some of her tension dissipate. Alexander was an excellent dancer. Of course, he was leading her effortlessly across the floor. "You're surprisingly good at this," he observed. "4 years of ballroom dance lessons," she explained. "My mother insisted, said it would build character. Your mother is a wise woman." His hand was warm against her back, his touch sure but gentle. After a moment, he said, "Whatever you heard, it doesn't matter. People will always talk." "I know," she sighed. "I just didn't realize how vicious some of your social circle could be." "They're not my friends," he said quietly. "They're business connections. There's a difference." "Do you have friends, Alexander Blackwood?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Instead of the cold dismissal she expected, he considered her question seriously. "A few, not many. Who's your best friend?" She pressed, genuinely curious. "David Chen. We were roommates at Harvard. He's a thoracic surgeon now. Lives in Boston with his wife and twin girls." A rare, genuine smile touched his lips. "He's the only person who's ever beaten me at chess." The glimpse into his personal life surprised her. "Will he be at the wedding?" "He's my best man," Alexander confirmed. "Though he thinks I've lost my mind, marrying someone I've known for less than a year." "Smart man," Alex said with a wry smile. "Indeed, which is why I haven't told him the truth." Alexander's expression became serious. "The fewer people who know, the better." The dance ended and he led her off the floor, his hand still at the small of her back. The touch had become familiar over the weeks, a gesture he used whenever they were in public, maintaining the illusion of intimacy. As the evening wore on, Alex found herself watching Alexander more closely. The way he navigated conversations, the subtle shifts in his expression that she was beginning to recognize. There was a complexity to him that she hadn't appreciated initially when all she'd seen was the arrogant CEO. It was nearly midnight when they finally left the event, sliding into the backseat of the waiting car. "You were magnificent tonight," Alexander said as they pulled away from the curb. "Richard Thompson is notoriously difficult to impress, but he's practically ready to hand you the keys to his kingdom." "Careful or I might steal your company out from under you," Alex joked, slipping off her heels with a sigh of relief. "Ah, so that's your master plan," he replied, loosening his bow tie. "Marry the CEO, charm the board, execute a hostile takeover." "Exactly, though I draw the line at actually running a multinational corporation. Too many meetings." Alexander laughed, a genuine laugh that transformed his face, softening the sharp angles and lighting his gray eyes. It occurred to Alex that she'd been seeing that laugh more frequently lately. "Well, you've certainly won over my grandmother," he said after a moment. "She called me yesterday to tell me how lucky I am." "And what did you say?" Alex asked, suddenly very interested in his answer. He looked at her for a long moment. "I said I was well aware of my good fortune." The words hung between them, weighted with more meaning than either of them was ready to acknowledge. When they arrived home, Alexander surprised her by pouring them each a glass of whiskey. A nightcap he offered to celebrate a successful evening. They settled on the terrace. The lights of the city spread out below them like a field of stars. "Can I ask you something?" Alex said after a comfortable silence. "Why did you create the fake relationship with the model? Was it just for publicity?" Alexander swirled the whiskey in his glass. "Partly, Sophia needed visibility for a new campaign, and I needed to distract the press from a difficult quarter at Blackwood Industries. That's cynical. It's practical. He took a sip of his drink. The public consumes these narratives. We simply gave them what they wanted. And before that, the string of relationships that never lasted more than 3 months. His expression closed slightly. What about them? Were they all for show, too? No. He set his glass down, but they all ended for the same reason, which is Alexander was quiet for so long that Alex thought he wouldn't answer. Then I told them from the beginning I wasn't looking for anything permanent. They all believed they could change my mind, and no one ever did. His gaze met hers, steady and unflinching. No. Why? What are you so afraid of? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I'm not afraid of anything, Miss Cooper. I simply prefer to control my own destiny by shutting people out, by being honest about my limitations. His voice took on an edge. Not everyone is built for happy endings. The rawness in his tone surprised her. I don't believe that, she said softly. I think everyone has the capacity for love, even arrogant billionaires. Alexander's lips curved into a faint smile. Your optimism is refreshing. It's not optimism, it's observation. I've seen how you are with your grandmother despite her manipulation. I've seen you with my family. There's warmth in you, Alexander. You just choose to hide it behind corporate ruthlessness and designer suits. He regarded her with an unreadable expression. You think you know me after a few weeks? I think I'm starting to, she replied honestly. They fell silent again. The city noise, a distant hum below them. Finally, Alexander stood. We should get some rest. We have the final menu tasting tomorrow, followed by the meeting with the florist at her door. He paused. Alex. She turned, still unaccustomed to hearing her name from his lips. Yes. What you did tonight, confronting those people who were gossiping. You didn't have to defend me. I wasn't defending you, she said automatically. I was defending us, our arrangement. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. She had felt a fierce protectiveness that went beyond their business deal. Alexander seemed to hear the uncertainty in her voice. He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. Either way, thank you. Before she could respond, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. It was a brief contact. Nothing like the staged kisses they sometimes exchanged for the benefit, photographers, but it sent a jolt of awareness through her that left her momentarily speechless. Good night, Alex, he said, his voice low. Good night, she managed to reply, watching as he turned and walked down the hallway to the guest room that had become his temporary bedroom. As she closed her door, Alex leaned against it, her hand unconsciously rising to touch the spot where his lips had been. This was getting complicated, dangerously complicated, because despite her best efforts to remain detached, she was beginning to care for the real Alexander Blackwood, the man behind the billionaire facade, the man who remembered exactly how she took her coffee, the man who had made her mother laugh until she cried with stories from his college days, the man whose rare, genuine smile made her heart beat a little faster. And caring for Alexander Blackwood had never been part of their arrangement. 2 weeks until the wedding. 2 weeks until she legally became Mrs. Blackwood in a ceremony that would be from start to finish an elaborate lie. 2 weeks to get her inconvenient feelings under control before she did something truly foolish, like falling for a man who had made it abundantly clear that love was not part of the deal. You sure about this? Mia asked, watching as Alex tried on her wedding gown for the final fitting. The dress was a masterpiece of understated elegance. A sleek silk creation with delicate lace details that somehow managed to be both modern and timeless. Of course, I'm sure, Alex replied, avoiding her sister's searching gaze in the mirror. Why wouldn't I be? Because 3 months ago, you didn't even know Alexander Blackwood, and now you're marrying him. We've been dating for save it, Mia interrupted, folding her arms. Mom might believe your fairy tale romance, but I know you, Alex. Something's off. Alex turned to face her sister, the voluminous skirt of her gown swishing around her ankles. What are you talking about? You hate grand gestures. You've always said marriage is a partnership, not a fairy tale. And suddenly you're having this lavish society wedding with a man who until recently was just your boss. Mia shook her head. Either you're hiding something or you've had a personality transplant. Alex sank onto a nearby ottoman, careful not to wrinkle the dress. The bridal boutique attendant had stepped out, giving them a moment of privacy. "I love him, Mia," she said, the practiced lie tasting strange on her tongue. She had said it countless times in interviews and at events, but never directly to someone she loved as much as her sister. "Do you?" Mia's expression softened as she knelt beside Alex. "Because if you do, that's great. I mean, he's gorgeous and rich and surprisingly not a jerk." But if there's something else going on for a brief wild moment, Alex considered telling her sister the truth, but the risk was too great. The fewer people who knew about their arrangement, the safer it was. "There's nothing going on," she insisted. "I know it's fast, but when you know, you know." She reached for her sister's hand. "I'm happy, Mia." "Really?" Mia studied her for a long moment. "Okay," she finally said, "but promise me something. Anything. If you ever need an out for any reason, you call me. I don't care how many billions he has. If he hurts you, I'll destroy him." Alex laughed, relieved at the familiar protectiveness in her sister's voice. "I promise. Though I'm not sure how you'd destroy one of the most powerful men in the country." "Please," Mia scoffed. "I'm a computer science major with a minor in cybersecurity. I could empty his bank accounts before he finished his morning coffee." "That's probably treason or something." "It's sisterly love," Mia corrected, helping Alex to her feet. "Now, let's get you out of this gorgeous dress before you spill something on it. You have a bachelorette party to prepare for." The bachelorette party had been Justine's idea. Carefully orchestrated evening at an exclusive rooftop bar, where they would be coincidentally photographed having a wonderful time with a select group of friends. Most of the friends were actually well-connected socialites who had been briefed on their role in the charade. Only Helen and Mia would be there as Alex's actual friends, since she'd been so focused on her career that her college friendships had largely faded to occasional social media interactions. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave for the party, Alex found Alexander in his home office frowning at his computer screen. "How do I look?" she asked, twirling in the forest green cocktail dress that had been selected for the occasion. Convincingly bachelorette-ish. Alexander glanced up, then did a double take, his attention fully captured. "You look stunning." The genuine appreciation in his eyes sent a warmth spreading through her chest. "Thank you." The dress was Justine's choice. Justine has excellent taste. He rose from his desk, approaching her with a small velvet box. "I have something for you, Alexander. You don't have to keep giving me jewelry. The engagement ring is already obscenely valuable. This isn't for me technically. It's from my grandmother." He opened the box to reveal a pair of emerald earrings that perfectly matched her dress. Family heirlooms. She wore them on her own wedding day and her mother before her. Alex stared at the earrings, then at Alexander. "I can't accept these. They're family treasures." "You're going to be family," he reminded her, his voice soft. "At least legally." The reminder of their arrangement's temporary nature stung more than it should have. "My grandmother would be heartbroken if you didn't wear them," he added. "She's quite invested in our story." Guilt twisted in Alex's stomach. "All right," she took the box. "But these go back to your family after everything is settled." Alexander nodded, watching as she put on the earrings. "They suit you." Their eyes met in the mirror, and for a moment Alex could almost believe they were really a couple preparing for their wedding. The thought sent a flicker of panic through her. "I should go," she said quickly. "Vanessa has a car waiting." "Of course." Alexander stepped back. "Enjoy your evening." Just as she reached the door, he called after her. "Alex," she turned. "Yes, I'll miss you tonight." The simple statement caught her off guard. They'd spent very few nights apart since she'd moved into the penthouse, establishing a routine that had become surprisingly comfortable. "I'll miss you too," she replied, surprised to realize she meant it. The bachelorette party was exactly as orchestrated as Alex had expected. Champagne flowing freely, strategic photo opportunities, and conversations that were just deep enough to appear genuine without revealing anything too personal. It was nearing midnight when Helen pulled her aside to a quiet corner of the rooftop lounge. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" her mother asked, her eyes searching Alex's face. "Of course, Mom," Alex replied automatically. Helen smiled knowingly. "You know, when I met your father, everyone thought we were rushing things. We got engaged after just 3 months. I didn't know that. We knew it was right." Helen squeezed her daughter's hand, "But I still had moments of panic. Moments when I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life." Alex swallowed hard. Did you make a mistake? Not for a second. Helen's eyes grew distant with memory. Your father was the love of my life. But that doesn't mean it was always easy. Alexander and I are very different people, Alex said carefully. The best partnerships often are. Helen touched one of the emerald earrings gently. These are beautiful family heirlooms. Alex nodded. His grandmother's. That tells me something important about him. Helen said a man who understands the value of family history is a man who values connection. Not what I expected from his tabloid image. There's a lot about him that would surprise you, Alex admitted, thinking of the quiet moments they'd shared over the past weeks. Alexander teaching her to play chess. His patience when explaining complex business concepts. The way he always made sure there was fresh coffee waiting when she woke up in the morning. I can see that in the way he looks at you, Helen said with a smile. It's the same way your father used to look at me. Like, you're the most fascinating puzzle he's ever encountered. Before Alex could respond, Justine appeared at her elbow. Perfect timing for the cake, she announced, guiding Alex back to the main group, where a ridiculously decadent confection awaited. As the night wore on, Alex found herself checking her phone more frequently, half expecting to see a message from Alexander. They had fallen into the habit of texting throughout the day, initially as part of their cover, but increasingly because they genuinely enjoyed their exchanges. Her phone remained silent, however, and by the time she returned to the penthouse, in the early hours of the morning, she was both tipsy from champagne and inexplicably disappointed by his absence from her evening. The penthouse was dark when she entered, but as she made her way toward her bedroom, she noticed a light in the kitchen. Alexander sat at the island counter, a glass of water and a stack of papers before him, still dressed in the clothes he'd been wearing when she left. "You're still up," she said, slipping off her heels with a sigh of relief. He looked up, his expression softening at the sight of her. "I was reviewing some contracts." "How was the party?" "Exactly as planned. Lots of photographs, lots of champagne. Nothing scandalous enough to make the wrong kind of headlines." "Perfect." He pushed a glass of water toward her. "Hydrate. Champagne. Hangovers are the worst." Alex smiled at his thoughtfulness, settling onto the stool beside him. "What about you? How was your bachelor party?" "Uneventful. Dinner with David and a few board members at the club." "Sounds thrilling." She teased. "Necessarily subdued," he corrected with a faint smile. "Can't have the groom misbehaving days before the wedding." The word groom hung between them, a reminder of how close they were to the wedding day. 3 days, Alex murmured, sipping her water. "Are you nervous?" Alexander considered the question seriously. "Not about the ceremony itself. It's just another performance," he paused. "Though I find I'm concerned about your comfort with all this. The scrutiny will only increase after the wedding." His consideration touched her. "I'll manage. I'm getting better at this whole socialite charade." "You're a natural," he said, surprising her with a compliment. "My grandmother called me again today to tell me how fortunate I am to have found someone so genuine in our artificial world." Guilt twisted in Alex's stomach. "I hate lying to her. She's been so kind to me." "I know." Alexander's expression became distant. "She's the one person I've always hated disappointing." Alex reached out impulsively, covering his hand with hers. "She loves you. That's clear in everything she says and does." "She's the only parent I've had for the past 5 years," he said quietly. "Since my father died, she's been my only family." The vulnerability in his admission made Alex's heart ache. "And now she's happy because she thinks you found love." "Yes." He turned his hand beneath hers, their fingers intertwining naturally, which makes what we're doing both cruel and kind. They sat in silence for a moment, hands joined on the countertop. "I should get some sleep," Alex finally said reluctantly, withdrawing her hand. "Tomorrow's the rehearsal dinner." Of course, Alexander gathered his papers. "Sleep well, Alex." As she turned to leave, a sudden impulse made her stop and face him again. "Thank you for waiting up for me. You didn't have to do that." Something warm flickered in his gray eyes. "I wanted to make sure you got home safely." "Home," she repeated softly. It was strange how his penthouse had begun to feel like exactly that. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of final preparations. The rehearsal dinner was a predictably elegant affair at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. With both families coming together for the first time, Alex watched with amusement as her down-to-earth mother charmed Alexander's sophisticated grandmother. The two women bonding over their shared love of classic literature and their apparent mutual delight in the upcoming union of their families. "They're getting along well," Alexander murmured, appearing at her side with a fresh glass of champagne. "Too well," Alex replied with a smile. "I think they're planning our children's education already." She'd meant it as a joke, but Alexander's expression grew serious. "I'm sorry about that aspect of this arrangement. I know many women your age are thinking about starting families." The unexpected consideration caught her off guard. "I haven't really thought about it much, to be honest. Career first, then family if it happens. A sensible approach." He glanced at his grandmother and Helen, now looking at something on Helen's phone. Probably photos of Alex as a child based on her mother's animated gestures. "This will hurt them when it ends," Alex said quietly. "The divorce." Alexander was silent for a moment. "Perhaps we can make it as painless as possible, a gradual growing apart rather than a sudden break. That would mean extending our arrangement beyond the originally planned time frame." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that neither was as eager to end their arrangement as they had been at the beginning. "We can discuss the details after the honeymoon," Alexander finally said. "The honeymoon," Alex repeated. They had planned a 2-week trip to the Blackwood family's private island in the Caribbean, a suitably romantic destination that would keep them safely away from prying eyes while establishing their marriage in the public imagination. 2 weeks alone with Alexander on a tropical island. The thought sent a flutter of anticipation through her that had nothing to do with their business arrangement. "Alex." His voice brought her attention back to him. "There's something I need to tell you before tomorrow." The seriousness in his tone alarmed her. "What is it?" Before he could answer, they were interrupted by David Chen, Alexander's best man, who clapped a hand on Alexander's shoulder. "Sorry to interrupt, but your grandmother is requesting your presence for a toast," David said before turning to Alex with a warm smile. "And I haven't had a chance to properly meet the woman who's managed the impossible feat of getting this workaholic to commit." Alexander's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "David, this is Alexandra Cooper. Alex, my oldest friend, Dr. David Chen." "The famous Alex," David said, shaking her hand. "I have to tell you, when Alexander first called to tell me he was engaged, I thought he was joking. I can imagine." Alex replied with a laugh. "It was rather sudden. But now that I've seen you together, it makes perfect sense," David continued, his gaze moving between them. "I don't think I've ever seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Heat rose to Alex's cheeks. "That's very sweet." "It's true," David insisted. "He's different with you. Softer." He grinned at Alexander, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "In 20 years of friendship, I've never seen Alexander Blackwood share food from his plate until tonight." Alex glanced at Alexander in surprise. She hadn't thought anything of the moment during dinner when he'd offered her a taste of his sea bass. "The toast, David," Alexander reminded him pointedly. Right, David winked at Alex. "We'll talk more later. I have 20 years of embarrassing stories to share." As David moved away, Alexander placed a hand at the small of her back, guiding her toward the head table. "I apologize for David. He's observant," Alex suggested. Alexander's gaze met hers. "Perhaps too much so." "What were you going to tell me before?" he interrupted. Alexander hesitated, then shook his head slightly. "It can wait. Tonight is for celebration." The toast was heartfelt, with Edith Blackwood speaking eloquently about love and partnership, raising a glass to the couple who had, in her words, reminded an old woman that true love still exists in this cynical world. As glasses clinked around them, Alexander leaned close to Alex's ear. "Last chance to back out," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. She turned to look at him, their faces inches apart. "Are you having second thoughts, Mr. Blackwood?" "Not at all, Miss Cooper." His eyes held hers, serious despite his light tone. "But I want to be certain you aren't." The genuine concern in his expression touched her. "I gave you my word," she said softly. "I'll be there tomorrow. I never doubted it." He lifted his glass to hers in a private toast. "To us, the most convincing fake couple in New York." But as their glasses touched, Alex couldn't help wondering if fake was still the right word for what they had become to each other. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect. as if even the weather had been arranged by Alexander's efficient team. Alex found herself in a suite at the plaza, surrounded by hairstylists, makeup artists, and Justine, who was coordinating everything with military precision. The ceremony starts at 4. Justine reminded her, checking items off a tablet. Guests are arriving at 3:30. You'll be hidden in the bridal room until exactly 4:15 when the music changes. The car will take you and your mother to the church at 3. Alex nodded, trying to quell the butterflies in her stomach. This was just another performance, she reminded herself. The culmination of their carefully constructed charade. So why did it feel so monumental? A knock at the door revealed Helen, already dressed in her mother-of-the-bride outfit, a sophisticated navy ensemble that made her look 10 years younger. "Oh, sweetheart," Helen said, tears welling in her eyes as she took in her daughter's appearance. "You look absolutely beautiful." "Mom, don't cry," Alex pleaded. "If you cry, I'll cry, and then the makeup artist will kill us both." Helen laughed, dabbing at her eyes carefully. "I can't help it. My baby girl is getting married. To a man she barely knows for money." Alex's conscience whispered. The guilt was almost overwhelming. Helen approached, taking Alex's hands in hers. "I have something for you. You're something old." She pressed a small box into Alex's palm. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny book. "It was your father's first gift to me," Helen explained. "He said it was because I always had my nose in a book." Her eyes grew misty. "He would have loved to be here today, and he would have loved Alexander." Alex swallowed hard against the lump in her throat. "You think so?" "I know so." Helen fastened the bracelet around her daughter's wrist. "He's a good man, your Alexander. I can see it in the way he takes care of you. The way he listens when you speak, the way his eyes follow you across a room." "Mom, I know modern marriages are different from my day," Helen continued. "But the foundation is the same. Respect, partnership, and love, of course, though I think that one grows stronger with time if you nurture it properly." Alex couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the sincerity in her mother's words and the magnitude of the deception she was perpetrating. "All I've ever wanted is for you to be happy," Helen said, cupping her daughter's cheek. "And I can see that he makes you happy. Did he?" The question echoed in Alex's mind as her mother left to check on Mia. Had Alexander Blackwood, against all odds and intentions, become someone who made her genuinely happy? She thought of their evening chess games. His dry humor that matched her own. The way he remembered how she took her coffee. The sound of his rare genuine laugh. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her across a crowded room. A private connection in the midst of their public performance. With sudden clarity, Alex realized that somewhere between the business arrangement and the wedding preparations, she had fallen in love with Alexander Blackwood. Not the billionaire CEO, but the man who existed beneath the polished exterior, complex, guarded, unexpectedly thoughtful. The realization left her breathless with panic. This wasn't supposed to happen. Love would complicate everything. But as she stood in front of the mirror in her wedding gown, Edith's emeralds at her ears and her mother's bracelet on her wrist, Alex knew she couldn't go through with the ceremony without telling Alexander the truth. She couldn't marry him, even temporarily, with this secret between them. With trembling fingers, she reached for her phone. "Alexander, we need to talk before the ceremony." Alex stared at her unsent message, finger hovering over the button. What would she even say to him? "Sorry, but I've complicated our business arrangement by falling in love with you." A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts, expecting her. "Mother," Alex called. "Come in." The door opened to reveal Edith Blackwood, elegant in a silver-gray suit that matched her perfectly coiffed hair. "Oh, Mrs. Blackwood." "Edith," Alex stammered, quickly setting her phone aside. "I wasn't expecting you." "I hope I'm not intruding," Edith said, closing the door behind her. "But there's a tradition in the Blackwood family. The grandmother of the groom visits the bride before the ceremony to bestow her wisdom." Her eyes twinkled, and to make sure she isn't having second thoughts. Alex swallowed hard. "That's a lovely tradition." Edith approached, taking in Alex's appearance with approval. "You look radiant, my dear. The dress is perfect, and I see you're wearing the emeralds." "They're beautiful," Alex said, touching one earring self-consciously. "Thank you for lending them to me." "They're not on loan," Edith corrected gently. "They're a gift, as is this." She opened her handbag and withdrew a slim velvet box. "My something blue for you." Inside lay a delicate sapphire pendant on a platinum chain, a deep, vibrant blue stone surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It's exquisite," Alex breathed, genuinely moved. "It was my mother's," Edith explained as she fastened it around Alex's neck. "And her mother's before that. The women in our family have worn it on their wedding days for generations." Guilt twisted painfully in Alex's chest. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything." Edith adjusted the pendant so it rested perfectly at Alex's collarbone. "I knew from the moment I saw you with my grandson that you were different from the others." "Different?" Edith smiled knowingly. "Alexander has dated many beautiful, accomplished women, but none of them saw him. The real man behind the name and fortune." She met Alex's eyes. "You see him." Alex couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. "I've watched him these past weeks," Edith continued. "He's happier than I've seen him since he was a boy, more at peace." She took Alex's hands in hers. "That's your doing, Edith. There's something I should tell you, that you're nervous." "Of course you are." Edith laughed warmly. "Every bride feels a moment of panic." "I certainly did." "It's not that," Alex began. But Edith pressed on. "I married my Henry after knowing him just 6 weeks," she confided. "Everyone said we were rushing, that it wouldn't last. We were married 52 years before I lost him." Her eyes grew misty. "When you know, you know." Alex's resolve faltered. How could she confess the truth now and break this sweet woman's heart? "I should go," Edith said, checking her watch. "The guests will be arriving soon, and I must take my place." She squeezed Alex's hands once more. "Welcome to the family, Alexandra." After Edith left, Alex sank into a chair, the weight of deception heavy on her shoulders. The sapphire pendant felt warm against her skin, a constant reminder of the facade she was maintaining. Her phone buzzed with a text, "Still planning to show up." Despite everything, the message made her smile. Alexander's dry humor had become one of her favorite things about him. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," she typed back. His response came quickly. "Already here." "David says, I'm pacing like an expectant father." Another text followed immediately. "There's something I need to tell you before the ceremony. Can you meet me in the church garden? South entrance 10 minutes. Alex's heart raced. What did he need to tell her? Had he somehow guessed her feelings? Was he going to call off their arrangement? "I'll be there," she replied, and called for Justine. "I need some air before we leave for the church," she explained. "Just 15 minutes alone." Justine frowned. "The schedule, please," Alex interrupted. 15 minutes to clear my head. Then I promise I'll follow every instruction to the letter." Reluctantly, Justine agreed, and soon Alex was slipping through a side entrance of the plaza, a coat over her wedding dress to avoid being recognized. The church was only a block away, and she reached the garden entrance without incident. Alexander was waiting, his back to her, a tall figure in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. At the sound of her footsteps on the gravel path, he turned. His expression when he saw her, surprise followed by something softer, more vulnerable, made her heart skip. "You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony," she said, attempting lightness. "It's bad luck. I have never been superstitious." He approached slowly, his eyes taking in her appearance. "You look incredible." "Thank you." She gestured to his tuxedo. "You clean up pretty well yourself." They stood facing each other in the dappled sunlight of the garden, the sounds of arriving guests and distant traffic creating a backdrop to this stolen moment. "You wanted to tell me something," Alex prompted when the silence stretched too long. Alexander nodded, suddenly looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Yes, I've been trying to find the right moment." But he took a deep breath. "The inheritance clause in my grandfather's will. It doesn't exist." Alex stared at him, not comprehending. "What?" "There is no requirement for me to be married by my 35th birthday," he clarified. "I invented it." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "You what? Why would you do that?" Alexander ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disrupting it in a way that made him look more human, less like the polished CEO she'd first met. "When you kissed me at the charity gala, my grandmother saw it and jumped to conclusions. She was so happy, so convinced that I'd finally found someone." He shook his head. "I couldn't bear to disappoint her. So you invented an inheritance clause and offered me $5 million to marry you. Alex's voice rose with disbelief. That makes no sense. I know. He looked away, then back to her, his expression raw with honesty. I panicked, and then I met you properly, really talked to you, and I wanted to know you better. You could have asked me to dinner like a normal person. Would you have said yes? He challenged. If Alexander Blackwood, CEO and notorious playboy, had asked out a marketing employee. No, she admitted after a moment. Probably not. Exactly, he stepped closer. The arrangement gave us a reason to spend time together without expectations, without the baggage of my reputation or the power dynamic of our professional relationship. Alex's mind was reeling. So this whole time, what was it? Some elaborate dating strategy. It didn't start that way, Alexander said quickly. But these past weeks with you, he broke off, seeming to struggle for words. Alex, I've never met anyone like you. Someone who challenges me, who sees past the name and the money to the person I really am. And who is that person? Because I thought I was getting to know the real Alexander Blackwood, but now I don't know what to believe. Everything else was real, he insisted. The conversations we've had, the time we've spent together, that was all real. Except for the $5 million bribe hanging over it all. The money is still yours, he said. Whether you go through with the wedding or walk away right now, I've already transferred it to an account in your name. Alex stared at him in shock. You're insane. Probably, he agreed with a faint smile. David has been telling me that for weeks. David knows. I told him yesterday. Alexander's expression grew serious. I couldn't go through with the wedding without telling you the truth. And I needed his advice on how not to lose you when I did. Lose me. Alex repeated, her heart pounding. Alexander took another step closer, eliminating the remaining distance between them. I didn't expect this to happen, he said softly. I didn't expect to fall in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, stunning Alex into silence. I understand if you want to call this off, he continued when she didn't respond. I've deceived you from the beginning, but I need you to know that somewhere along the way, this stopped being an arrangement for me and became something real. You love me. Alex finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle. I love your intelligence, your wit, your fierce loyalty to your family. I love how you challenge me without fear or hesitation. I love watching you beat me at chess and pretend it was luck. A surprised laugh escaped her. It was luck the first time anyway. I don't expect you to feel the same, he continued, his gray eyes intense. But I couldn't let you marry me under false pretenses. Alex's mind was spinning. Alexander loved her. The arrangement had been built on a fabrication, but his feelings that mirrored her own unexpected love for him, were real. Say something, he urged when she remained silent. Even if it's to tell me to go to hell. Alex took a deep breath. 2 nights ago at the rehearsal dinner. What were you going to tell me before David interrupted us? Was it this? Alexander nodded. I tried several times, but the moment never seemed right. And you thought 20 minutes before our wedding was the perfect time. Despite everything, she found herself smiling. Hope flickered in his eyes. Is that a good sign that you're smiling instead of slapping me? I haven't decided yet. She withdrew her hand from his and stepped back, needing space to think. You lied to me, Alexander. Manipulated me into this entire situation. Yes, he admitted without hesitation. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Regardless of what happens next. What happens next? Alex repeated thoughtfully. What do you want to happen next? Alexander's gaze never left hers. Ideally, I want to marry you. Not because of an invented inheritance clause or a business arrangement, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you. That's quite a leap from temporary marriage of convenience. I'm aware. A ghost of his familiar dry humor curved his lips. But I found that with the right partner, I'm capable of more growth than I thought possible. Alex considered him for a long moment. And if I need time, if I'm not ready to jump from fake engagement to real marriage in the space of a conversation, then we call off the wedding, he said simply. I explained to our guests that I'm not worthy of you, which has the benefit of being entirely true. And we start again properly this time. Dinner, movies, all the normal dating rituals I bypassed with my elaborate scheme. His willingness to walk away from everything they'd planned, to face the public embarrassment and personal disappointment of their families, told Alex everything she needed to know about the sincerity of his feelings. "There's just one problem with that plan," she said slowly, "which is, I'm already in love with you, too." Alexander went very still. "What did you say?" I said, "I love you too, you impossible man." Alex stepped forward, closing the distance between them again. "That's what I was going to tell you before the ceremony, that somewhere between chess games and charity galas and family dinners, I fell in love with the real Alexander Blackwood." The joy that transformed his face was unlike anything she'd seen before. Open, vulnerable, without a trace of his usual reserve. "Alexander," came Edith's voice from nearby. "Are you out here? The guests are seated and oh." They turned to find Edith standing at the garden entrance, staring at them with wide eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "It's all right, grandmother," Alexander said, his voice warm. "We were just having a pre-wedding conversation." Edith's gaze moved between them, her expression knowing. "I see. Well, when you're finished, the minister is ready whenever you are." With a smile that suggested she understood exactly what was happening, she retreated back into the church. "So," Alexander said when they were alone again, his hands finding Alex's. "Where does this leave us?" Alex considered the question. "Seriously, I think it leaves us with a choice. We can call off the wedding and start over. Or he prompted, or we can go through with it, not as a business arrangement, but as two people who love each other and want to build a life together." Alexander's thumbs traced gentle circles on her wrists. "That sounds suspiciously like a real marriage." "It does, doesn't it?" Alex smiled up at him. "The question is, are you ready for that? No escape clauses, no predetermined end date. Just us figuring it out day by day like normal people do." "Normal has never appealed to me before," he said thoughtfully. "But I find I'm quite drawn to the idea of normal with you. Is that a yes, Mr. Blackwood?" In answer, Alexander leaned down and kissed her. Not the calculated kiss they'd shared for photographers or the brief chaste kisses they'd exchanged in front of family, but a real kiss that spoke of love and promise and a future neither of them had anticipated. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alexander pressed his forehead to hers. "That's a definite yes, Miss Cooper, though I'd like to renegotiate one detail of our arrangement, which is the $5 million, he said. "I'd rather it went to a foundation in your name. Something to support education for underprivileged students, perhaps. I don't want our marriage to begin with what feels like a transaction." Alex's heart swelled at the gesture. "I think that's a wonderful idea." The church bells began to chime. 4-0. "I believe that's our cue," Alexander said, offering her his arm. "Shall we get married for real this time? Just one moment." Alex took out her phone and quickly typed a message to Justine. "Change of plans. Proceeding with ceremony, but with a few adjustments to the vows. We'll explain later." Then she slipped her arm through Alexander's. "I'm ready now." As they walked toward the church, Alexander glanced down at her with a bemused expression. "You know, when you kissed me at that charity gala, I thought it was the most reckless thing anyone had ever done to me. And now I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me." The ceremony was everything a society wedding should be: elegant, tasteful, with just the right blend of tradition and personal touches. But for Alex and Alexander, standing before their families and exchanging vows they had rewritten that morning to reflect their genuine feelings, it was something far more significant than a social event or business arrangement. It was the beginning of a story neither of them had planned to write. During the reception, as they moved among their guests, Alexander kept Alex close by his side, his hand rarely leaving the small of her back. "You're being very attentive, husband," she murmured as they shared a quiet moment near the champagne fountain. "I'm still not entirely convinced you won't come to your senses and run," he replied with a wry smile. "After I went to all the trouble of memorizing those new vows," she leaned into him. "Besides, I've already committed the cardinal sin of falling in love with you. I might as well see it through." "How pragmatic of you, Mrs. Blackwood." The name sent a pleasant shiver through her. "I'm nothing if not practical." Later, as they danced beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Ballroom, Alex caught sight of their families watching them with identical expressions of satisfaction. Helen and Edith, seated together at a table, both misty-eyed with happiness. They look pleased with themselves, she commented, nodding toward the two women. Alexander followed her gaze. They should be. Their plan worked perfectly. Their plan? You don't think it was coincidence that my grandmother showed up at that exact charity gala, or that your mother accepted our whirlwind romance so readily? He raised an eyebrow. They've been matchmaking since day one. That's ridiculous, Alex protested. They didn't even know each other until the engagement, didn't they? Alexander's expression was amused. Ask my grandmother about the book club she joined last fall, and why she was so insistent I attend that particular charity event. You're saying our mothers conspired to bring us together. The idea was absurd, and yet, knowing both women, not entirely implausible. I'm saying that perhaps our convenient arrangement was convenient for more than just us. He pulled her closer as the music slowed, though I doubt even they anticipated the exact path we would take. Alex laughed, resting her head against his shoulder. So this was all an elaborate setup. Not entirely, he murmured into her hair. The inheritance clause was my invention, and your kiss was, I believe, genuinely spontaneous. It was, she confirmed, though in retrospect, it seems I chose my escape route rather prophetically. Indeed. Remind me to thank Charles Peyton III for his unwanted advances. As the evening progressed toward midnight, Alexander led Alex away from the reception to a quiet balcony overlooking the twinkling lights of the city. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket and withdrawing a small box. Inside lay a platinum band set with alternating sapphires and diamonds that perfectly matched her pendant. I had it made this morning, he explained as he slipped it onto her finger beside the enormous engagement ring. I wanted you to have a wedding band that represented the real beginning of our marriage, not the arrangement. Alex blinked back, tears at the gesture. It's perfect. There's one more thing. He took both her hands in his. I want you to know that the job offer stands. After a suitable honeymoon, if you want to return to work at Blackwood Industries, there will be a position waiting for you. You'd let your wife work for your company. My wife can do whatever makes her happy, he said. Seriously, I've spent enough time with you to know that you're brilliant at what you do and that having a purpose beyond being Mrs. Blackwood matters to you. The thoughtfulness of his understanding touched her deeply. Thank you. I think I would like to go back eventually, though perhaps not to marketing. Oh, I've had some ideas about expanding the Blackwood Foundation's educational initiatives. She smiled up at him. If you're serious about that new foundation in my name, it would pair well with work you're already doing. See, brilliant. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. We can discuss it on the honeymoon, along with whether you want to continue living in the penthouse or find a new place together somewhere that feels like it belongs to both of us. My, Alex teased. You really were paying attention when I talked about partnerships and fresh starts. I pay attention to everything about you, he said simply. I plan to spend the rest of my life doing exactly that. And as he sealed this new promise with a kiss, Alex reflected on the strange winding path that had led them here. From a desperate kiss at a charity gala to a marriage that had begun as a business arrangement and transformed into something authentic and precious. It wasn't the love story she had ever imagined for herself. It was better. 1 year later, are you sure about this? Alexander asked, his hand warm in Alex's as they stood on the steps of the same charity gala where their story had begun. Absolutely, she replied, squeezing his fingers. It's time. Inside, they made their way through the crowd to where Edith stood chatting with Helen, the two women having become inseparable friends over the past year. Grandmother, Alexander said, kissing Edith's cheek. Mother, he added, embracing Helen with equal warmth. You're late, Edith scolded without heat. The speeches are about to begin. We had a stop to make on the way, Alex explained, exchanging a meaningful glance with her husband. Oh, Helen's gaze sharpened with interest. Alexander cleared his throat. We wanted you both to be the first to know. We're expecting. The women's squeals of delight drew attention from nearby guests, but neither Edith nor Helen seemed to notice or care. When? Helen demanded, her eyes already glistening with happy tears. July, Alex said, unable to keep the smile from her face. We just came from the doctor's office. A summer baby, Edith sighed happily. Perfect. As the women began an immediate discussion of nursery themes and family names, Alexander drew Alex slightly aside. Happy? He asked, his eyes searching hers with the same intensity that had captivated her from the beginning. "Very," she assured him, rising on tiptoes to press a quick kiss to his lips. "Though I'm starting to think you were right about our mother's matchmaking scheme." Oh, they seemed suspiciously prepared for this news. She nodded toward Helen, who was already showing Edith something on her phone that looked remarkably like baby furniture. Alexander laughed, the sound still her favorite music after a year of marriage. "Perhaps they're just optimistic." Perhaps Alex leaned against him, content in a way she had never imagined possible when she'd first kissed him in desperate escape from an unwanted suitor. Or perhaps they knew all along that we were meant to find each other through whatever unorthodox means necessary, he suggested, his eyes twinkling with remembered amusement. Exactly. And as Alexander's arm circled her waist, drawing her close in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing, Alex reflected that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most perfect endings. Or rather, not endings at all, but beginnings of an entirely different kind. The end.